בעזרת השם נעשה ונצליח. The subject of the shi'ur is the 10 plagues. So the question that we ask, I think that we should also put it on the record, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to bring 10 plagues on Egypt when he can do it with one plague? Or he can put them all to sleep and release the Jewish people, and the Jewish people walk for free. And that's going to be the redemption. Instead, we all know, we read about it in the Torah, we read about it in the Haggadah, and every day we're mentioning in our davening the exodus of Egypt. Why is it so important? So it was few opinion here. I'm going to summarize and we'll see who's right, who's wrong. So let's start with the first plague. The first plague was the plague of blood. Just before we start, I just want to mention something for the record. The first 3 plagues not been done by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, the first 3 plagues, didn't done them. It was the plague of dam, sfardea, and kinim. It means blood, frogs, and lice. Moshe didn't done it. And the main reason behind it, he showed gratitude to whoever helped him. Wow, the blood was on a Nile. Moshe Rabbeinu been saved by the Nile. He showed gratitude to the Nile. Tzfardea, again, where is the tzfardea came? From the liquid of the Nile. He didn't want to heat it. The third one was lice. It was the sand. We all know that lice come from sand. Moshe Rabbeinu buried the Egyptian man that he killed in the sand. To show gratitude, he didn't bring the 3 plagues. That's for the record. Let's start with Makat Dam. Makat Dam been brought on the Egyptian, number 1, measure for measure. What was the measure for measure? If you think about it. Why it's so important that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring on the Egyptian dafka blood? So the Midrash tell us that Paro HaRasha got leprosy. And the advisors that used to be that the sorcerers, the witchcrafters, suggest to them, and they suggest to Paro that he should have a bath with babies' blood. So Pharaoh used to slaughter every morning 150 babies, and he used to bath in the blood. The same thing in the evening. HaKadosh Baruch Hu say measure for measure. I'm going to teach you a lesson. You're going to drink blood for a full week. Although that was for the Egyptian, measure for measure. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu come to build the emunah in the Jewish people. Why? And now I'm going to answer our friend Paul. The Jewish people was idol worshippers. They didn't have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They worship idols. And that's why the sea didn't want to split for them. Because the sea said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Egyptian, the idol worshippers. Also, Bnei Israel was idol worshippers. Ma ele of the avodah zarah, af ele of the avodah zarah. So how come that you want to drown the Egyptian and the Jewish people not, Bnei Israel? We explained that in the Shi'ur. We're not going to go through that. That's in Parashat Beshalach. So here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu build the emunah in the Jewish people that he's in charge about all the liquid in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu also now building Bnei Israel dignity. How? Bnei Israel, for 210 years of hard slavery, have no sin to their name. HaKadosh Baruch Hu make the Jewish people rich. And you know how? By selling mineral water. If anyone going to ask you who was the first one to sell mineral water, not Aquazania, not that I'm publicizing, Bnei Israel in Egypt. What's happened? The Egyptian cannot drink any liquid except blood. What did they have to do? they have to buy the liquid from Bnei Israel. And that's how the Jewish people become rich on the first plague. HaKadosh Baruch Hu make them rich to give them a bit of a dignity. After 210 years of slavery, HaKadosh Baruch Hu given them a bit of money to make them rich, so they feel that they own something. So from here we see that the 10 plagues didn't just come to punish the Egyptian. The 10 plagues didn't come just to make the Jewish people rich. The 10 people come to teach the entire world and Bnei Israel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one and only one that in charge about all the liquid in the world. What's happened also? That in Makat Dam, when a Jewish person used to drink water and the Egyptian wanted to drink from the same glass with another straw, the Jewish people was drinking water, and if the Egyptian didn't pay money, he would drink blood. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can define where's the liquid going to go. And that's what was the first plague that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought. Number one, to make sure that the Jewish people have a bit of dignity by owing a little bit of money. Any question? Let's continue. The second plague was the frog. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished the Egyptian measure for measure. What was the measure, Rabotai? The Egyptian didn't allow the Jewish people to have a rest. After a hard day of work, the Egyptian wanted the Jewish people to wake up in the middle of the night, to continue washing for them the dishes after a big party. He decided that he wants a cup of tea. The Jewish people have to get up in the evening, at night, in the middle of the night, to light the fire, to go to the Nile, to draw the water, and then to put it on the fire. They didn't allow them to sleep. HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, you didn't allow my children to sleep, I'm going to teach you what is it not to sleep. I'm going to bring on you the plague of frog. That wherever you're going to be, will be frog with you. In a bed, in the closet, in a room, in a bathroom. Wherever they're gone was frogs. Even the water that they drink, they have frog inside their tummy. And we all know the noise that the frog make. So they couldn't sleep for that week. That's measure for measure because they didn't allow the Jewish people to sleep while they was in slavery. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu show that he's in charge, in control of the creatures, but inside the water. To build the emunah again in the Jewish people, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's the God, and not to believe on all different gods. Any question?
What is the source of
the Midrashim? Midrash. These all different. I brought from Yalkut Shimoni. Sorry, let's start like this. I brought most of it, okay? Me'am Lo'ez. Yalkut Me'am Lo'ez. Midrash Me'am Lo'ez. Rabbi Yaakov Koli. He wrote it. Rabbi Yaakov Koli, born in Jerusalem. But the book, Midrash Me'am Lo'ez, it's a very famous Midrash. That's been publicized and been published in Turkey. And he died in Turkey, Rabbi Yaakov Koli. And he ended dying in Turkey. Then there is Midrash Tanhuma. There's all different Midrashim. But mainly, if you ask me where is the main source, from the Midrashim, all different Midrashim, but the main one was Me'am Lo'ez. You follow? Me'am Lo'ez, remember. The third plague was Makat Kinim. Makat Kinim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bringing an Egyptian, again for a week. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu paid the Egyptian measure for measure. Why? What was the measure for measure? The Egyptian didn't allow the Jewish people to have personal hygiene. Didn't allow them to shower. Didn't allow them to clean themselves. HaKadosh Baruch Hu paid them measure for measure. You make my kids suffer from lice, I'll let you understand what is it to live with lice. Measure for measure. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed that he's in charge, and a small creature less than the size of a 5-cent coin that live under the sand. Not only that, in that specific plague, the Egyptian sorcerers lift up their hand. They couldn't create it. That it's a Yad Elokimi, that's the hand of God. What does it mean? The plague of blood and the plague of frogs, the sorcerers and the witchcrafters managed to do that. But the plagues of Kinim, because it was so small, they couldn't create that. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu again built the emunah in the Jewish people to show that all the sorceries and all the witchcrafting that was in Egypt, they're all false. There is only one God, and He can create that. Any question? Let's continue. The next plague, number 4, was the plague of Arov. Arov, you call it the wild beast in English, am I right? That's the wild beast, correct me if I'm wrong. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu paid the Egyptian measure for measure. What's happened in the plague of the wild beast? HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the wild beast on the Egyptian, and the wild beast attacked only Egyptian, not Jews. That means a Jew can walk on the street. Next to him was Ahmad. The lion will say, "Good morning, Mr. Jew." For Ahmed, he say, and he finished them. Measure for measure. Why? Hazal tell us in the Midrashim that the Egyptian wanted to build circus, wanted to build zoo. Some of them wanted to have a wild and a predator animal as a pet, and they used to send the Jewish people to hunt them, to create for them something personal, general, like a zoo. Not only that, Hazal say in a different midrash that I saw that they used to bring a lion, like they used to do in Rome, and they used to let a Jewish person fight against a lion and to see who can win. HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, measure for measure. I'm going to send on you those wild beasts and let you understand what's going to happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu show Bnei Israel that next to him can be an Egyptian person. He will walk right next to him and nothing going to happen to him. And from the other side, the Egyptian going to be the predator. Not only that, here HaKadosh Baruch Hu show to build the emunah again in the Jewish people that He's in control of all the wild beasts in the world. And Hazal tell us something very interesting on that verse. Hazal say, "Ve'adama asher hem alea," and the land or the ground that those wild beasts was on it. And Hazal say, what? Why did the Torah say that? The land that the wild beast on it. Why is that? Hazal tells us something very important. Hazal tell us that usually if you take a wild animal and you take it to a different environment, he lost his confidence. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when He brought the wild beasts from all over the world, He brought them with their own ground. So they're not going to lose their own confidence. So they're going to be as vicious as they are in their own place. Any question? Let's continue. The next plague is Dever. I don't know how you say Dever in English. There is any name to Dever? That
Pestilence.
the pestilence. The plague of pestilence. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu paid the Egyptian measure for measure. By that he killed all the animal that was, let's call it the domestic animal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu killed all the domestic animal that was in Egypt, except those ones that been forced to go inside the house or to the barn and was locked. HaKadosh Baruch Hu paid measure for measure. What was the measure for measure? The Egyptian forced Bnei Israel to become shepherd, to go to the wilderness, to keep them away from their partners, that they're not going to multiply. Because the Egyptian didn't know how to stop Bnei Israel from multiplying, they decided they're going to send the husband to the wilderness to become shepherds, to look after the flock. HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, you wanted to stop Bnei Israel from multiplying. You wanted your flock to multiply. I'm going to now destroy all your flock, all your domestic animal. Measure for measure. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed that he's in control of all the diseases that can hit the animal, and build again the Emunah in Bnei Israel. That's plague number 5. Yes?
Did the Egyptians also worship cats?
The Egyptian worshipped certain gods. The main god was the Taleh, the lamb. And that, I'll get to it now. Pharaoh considered himself his God, because he said, Miu Hashem, who's God that I should listen to him? Who's your God? Pharaoh said to Moshe Rabbeinu, who's your God that I should listen to him? And Bnei Israel was part of that habit that they start to believe, they did believe, that Pharaoh have kind of a supernatural power. So Pharaoh was pretend that he's God. They worship the sun, they worship the moon, they worship the lamb, and etc. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to conquer all of that ideas, and all of that fought from them. He gone step by step.
With domestic animals, you mean cattle, lamb, that kind of
Horses, anything. Not only dogs and cats, not only small animal, even the big animal.
So domestic animal meaning the cat.
Can be a kettle, can be anything.
So the dogs, the cats, all out.
Everything that is not wild. Wild, when I say wild, I'm talking about lion, like predators, or like things that you can't keep them in your garden. They don't think that you can look after them. You follow? For example, the elephant, it's not a domestic animal. Okay, the 6th plague was Makat Shhin. Shhin is boiled. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu paid measure for measure to the Egyptian. Why Dafka Shhin? Shhin is boiled. We know that the Egyptian didn't allow the Jewish people to have a bath, number 1. You remember we mentioned? Number 2, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought boiled on the Egyptian. Why? Because they forced the Jewish people in winter to go to the Nile, to draw water, to bring it, to start the fire, to warm it up, and to make for them a bath. In summer, they have to create a cold bath. The work is actually double. HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, you made my children water. How you call a person that draw water? There's a certain name for them. People that sell water. How you call them? Aquazania. No. But you know what I'm saying? Water drawers.
pick and pay.
I'll teach you a lesson. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to bring on you a plague that you cannot have a shower. Not can have a bath. Person that have boiled cannot come closer to a water. Measure for measure. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu show to Bnei Israel that he's in charge about the disease that he can bring on a human being. To build the emunah in the Jewish people. Again, here HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only that pay measure for measure to the Egyptian for what they done to Bnei Israel, he punished them to suffer and to understand what is it not to have a shower, what is it not to have a bath, not to keep your personal hygiene. Plague number 7, that's one of the famous plague that there is a lot of question about it, that's the plague of hell. What is the plague of hell? The plague of hell is water that got ice, but it was a miracle with that it came with fire. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu here show Bnei Israel that he's in charge about the fire in the world and the liquid. And he can make sure that water and fire can live together. And nothing going to happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought that plague to show measure for the Egyptian. What was the measure for measure? The Egyptian forced Bnei Israel to guard their field, to guard the orchard, the vineyard. Wherever they have crops, they make from them a gardening company, 7 Arrow, or Gap, whatever you want to call it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, you wanted my children to look after your own personal field, orchard, vineyard, whatever. I'm going to destroy all of that by bringing the plague of Barad, the hell. That means when the hell came, he destroyed all the crops, all the trees, everything that was in Egypt, or let's say most of it. Because after that come the plague of Arbe, the 8th plague is Arbe, that he finished the job. So here HaKadosh Baruch Hu show measure for measure. You wanted to turn my children to be guardian of your personal field, orchard, vineyard, I'll destroy it. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu build emunah again in Bnei Israel. The 8th plague is Makat Arbe, is the locust. And here HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the first thing that he exposed to Bnei Israel, that plague was 6 days. You know that? The plague of Arbe was for 6 days. The Arbe, on a 7-day strike, didn't work. Because it was Shabbos. If you take a locust and you turn it on his stomach, you can see the letter Het. Het in Hebrew. That's to represent Hail. Hail, it means the army of the Almighty. The locust. If you turn it to his stomach, certain of the locusts, not all the locusts, especially the kosher one, you see the letters Het on it. To show that that's the army of Hashem. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu show Bnei Israel for the first time. He prepared them for Shabbos. That there is Shabbos in the world. Number 2, HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepare measure for measure. What was the measure for measure? They sent Bnei Israel to become the guardians. Whatever left from that crops came the Arbe and finished it. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed that he's in control of all the flying animals and the flying creatures in the world. Not only that, another miracle happened with the plagues of locusts, that the Egyptians wanted to pickle them. And they put them in a jar, and they closed them. Those locusts that had been caught by the Egyptian, by the end of the plague, disappear. Not one locust, even that they've been caught, and even that they try to pickle them, nothing left in Egypt. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu build again the emunah in Bnei Israel, that he's the God that in charge of the flying creatures. The 9 plagues, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring the plague of Hoshech. That's a very, very difficult plague for Bnei Israel because 80% of Bnei Israel that was in Egypt died that plague. Do you know that? 80%, Rabotai, of Bnei Israel, Am Israel, there's a difference between Bnei Israel and Am Israel, 80% of Am Israel died that plague. 80% of Am Israel that didn't want to leave Egypt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu killed them in a plague of darkness. The plague of darkness been split to two. The first plague of darkness was a darkness that one can't see each other. That the Egyptian couldn't see the Jewish people. The Jewish can see everything. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want to embarrass those wicked people from Am Israel, and he killed them. He given a chance for 3 days for Bnei Israel to bury them without the Egyptian knowing for the first 3 days. The second part of the plagues was a plague of darkness that the person that was sitting cannot stand up. A person that was standing up couldn't sit. A person that was lying down couldn't get up. And why is that? Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed to Bnei Israel where all the gold, the silver, the jewelry, the good stone, that the Egyptian hiding to make them again rich. Where's the nice clothes? Just remember the woman didn't have nice clothes. They were slaves, the same like the male. The husband loved the high-tech. He won all the high-tech from the Egyptian. The woman won the jewelry. HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed to Bnei Israel on those 3 days where they are. Because the Egyptian can hear that Bnei Israel walking in their house, but Bnei Israel didn't tell. Nothing. When did they get a permission? After that plague, before they left. So in a plague of darkness, HaKadosh Baruch Hu proved to Bnei Israel that he's in charge about the heavenly bodies. That he's in control of all the heavenly body. The sun and the moon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought that plague measure for measure. What was the measure for measure in Makat Choshech? Hazal tell us that the Egyptian, when he used to sit and eat supper, when he wanted to read his book, they turned the Jewish people, about I don't laugh, to a candlestick. You know what is it, a candlestick? They used to take a wax candle, put it on the top of Bnei Israel's head, and the wax used to melt on their skin. They're not allowed to scream, they're not allowed to move. Hazal tell us that if they even moved, some of them chopped their head. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to the Egyptian, you wanted light, I'll teach you measure for measure. I'll bring you the plague of Choshech. The last plague is the plague of the firstborn, Makat Bechorot. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu done a great miracle for Bnei Israel. And what was the great miracle? The great miracle that he done with that he built the Emunah in Bnei Israel. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed that he's in control of all the human beings in the world. No one can escape from him. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed that he knows exactly who's the firstborn of the Egyptian. And what's happened, the plague of Makat Bechorot. In that plague, HaKadosh Baruch Hu killed all the firstborn Egyptian. Even if they decide to go for a trip to Mauritius, or decide to go and visit in Jordan, on a plague of the firstborn, if he was a firstborn Egyptian, he will die in Egypt. And he will die in Jordan. He will die wherever he is. So all the world will know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in charge of all the human beings in the world. It was measure for measure. Measure for measure. Akadosh Baruch Hu said to the Egyptian, you wanted to kill my children? Every male that will born you wanted to kill? I'll kill your firstborn. Now, here Akadosh Baruch Hu exposed the immorality of the Egyptian woman. What was so important? Because the Egyptian pretended to be the very culture nation. But Hazal tell us that תשעה קבים של זנות ירדה לעולם. What does it mean? Hazal tell us 10 measures of immorality came to the world. תשעה נטלה Africa. 9 of that immorality portion Africa took. The last portion took the rest of the world. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu show how the Egyptian nation behaved. What's happened in that plague? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the plague of the firstborn, killed every firstborn in every family. That means in one house, suddenly it was צעקה גדולה. The Torah tells us, ותהי צעקה גדולה בכל ארץ מצרים. In all of the land of Eretz Mitzrayim was a big scream. Why? The husband suddenly realized in his house you have more than one child that was a firstborn. I don't understand. I know that Ahmad is my firstborn. But suddenly you see Musa also dying. What's happening here? You have another relationship, a forbidden relationship with another man. And he started hitting her. And that was the scream, that the woman screamed because the husband was beating her. Because now HaKadosh Baruch Hu exposed the immorality of the Egyptian woman. So we see from here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, number one, showed that he's in charge, in control of all the world. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't tell them how many people there is in a country. I don't know country can tell you how many people there is in their countries. They're estimating. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell them that he know who's the firstborns of the Egyptian wherever they are. Because he killed them. Not only that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu built the emunah in Bnei Israel, that in that plague, he passed over the house. And nothing hit the Jewish people. So we see that measure for measure, building the emunah in Bnei Israel, making Bnei Israel rich, and reveal to them the Shabbat again. What was so important? When we read the Haggadah, we have to understand that all of those 10 plagues didn't just was to take the Jewish people out of Egypt, like it sounds. It's to prepare Bnei Israel to become a nation. To prepare Bnei Israel now to be ready to receive the Torah. Because a slave, we all know how a slave behaves. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bringing the Jewish people dignity, power. What was the power? That people was afraid of them. Now it suddenly become the nation of God. HaKadosh Baruch Hu protect them. Until now, no one to protect the Jewish people. And that was the secret of the temple. Paul, you wanted to ask?
You say every plague you say is justified on the basis of measure for measure. So I assume what you're saying is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was showing justice.
Absolutely.
So then, don't we learn that in Bereshit, the second chapter of Bereshit, that the other side of justice is mercy? And don't we, as a matter of common sense, are we saying there weren't any Egyptians who regretted what they had done to us? There were no Egyptians. Not one of them, after all these things that happened to them, none of them regretted. And Hashem didn't show their mercy.
I tell you, I didn't expect that question, but I'll answer you. Because I answered it before. Someone else asked me similar. So you ask few questions, not only one. First of all, you're asking, where's the mercy, נכון? הקדוש ברוך הוא sent Bnei Israel to be slave, נכון? Why does the Egyptian have to suffer? הקדוש ברוך הוא sent us to be slave there. Hazal answered that. Hazal answered like this. I sent you, Bnei Israel, to be your slave. That's all. I didn't ask you to make the hard work. I didn't told you to turn. Now that Bnei Israel have to supply also the straw. And if they're not going to supply the straw, and they didn't finish the capacity of bricks that they have to do a day, they used to take their kids instead of the bricks. So you make their life much more miserable. Now you deserve a punishment. If was Egyptian good or not, Hazal tell us Mitzrayim Ara'im, the wicked Egyptian. The wicked Egyptian, Mitzrayim Ara'im. Why Mitzrayim Ara'im? What did you say in Haggadah? Ve'anunu. What do you mean? We'll speak about it in Haggadah because from next week we're going to go through the Haggadah. That the Egyptian made Bnei Israel wicked. How did they make them wicked? But that they taught them to be idol worshippers. They taught them to be wicked, to leave HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They forgot all the good that Yosef HaTzadik done for them and Yaakov, that he blessed them. You remember? They have nothing. They were supposed to have 7 years of famine. And if it wasn't for Yosef, the entire Egypt will starve. They forgot that. Not only that, Pharaoh decided to slaughter babies and to bath in their blood. Every firstborn, HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished them. They wanted to kill every male born. I told you that I'm sending my kids to you to slavery, not to kill them, not to persecute them. You understand what I'm saying? Mitzrayim Ara'im. And why they were so wicked? We saw that after all of those 10 plagues, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished them, it wasn't enough for them. When Bnei Israel reached to the Sea of Weeds, they ran after them. They wanted to kill them. They wanted to bring them back. It wasn't enough 10 plagues? No, for the Egyptian it wasn't. You understand how wicked that was? Paul? Who want to ask question? Yes. Who's first? No? I can't hear. The plague of darkness? How many? How many Jews been killed? 80%. V'hamushim alu b'nei Israel. 80% of the wicked of Am Israel. I say Am Israel, a correct mass of not Bnei Israel. Am Israel include the multi-nation. Yes, doctor. For sure. He said, Ad matai yayu lanu lemokesh. Until when that nation going to be to us like a booby trap, like a bomb. They want us to leave. But what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu done? ואני חיזקתי את לב פרעה. הקדוש ברוך הוא said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm going to harden the heart of Pharaoh. רבותיי, we didn't spoke about it last week when we spoke about the plate. From all the food in the world, we're eating, remember we mentioned Korban Hagigah, the sacrifice of Hagigah, we eat the eggs. Eggs is the only thing that as much that you cook it, it will get harder. All the others will get softer. Please God, when we speak about it, why do we eat eggs during the Haggadah? I will reveal to you another hidush. Why
Weren't
dafka?
the people who went along not Jewish, who went with us, not Jewish, so weren't those people Gentiles who were sorry for what they did, and they were forgiven and they went?
They wasn't. They joined Bnei Israel, because Hazal tell us, וגם ערב רב עלה איתם, the Torah tell us. And also the multi-nation came out with them. What it was, the multi-nation? That they joined Bnei Israel, not because there was a ger tzedek. You know what is a ger tzedek? It's a convert. You know what is it? That converting for the sake of heaven. They not, because they saw that now the Jewish people become the major power, they wanted to join. It suited them. You understand? Rabotai, the time is late. Ezrat Hashem, when you read the Haggadah, when you read the 10 plagues, that will give us a different aspect, how to look about the Haggadah.